welcome to Pen to Paper's latest episode on the pros and cons of self-publishing versus traditional publishing and which one should you choose. So today we're looking at the cons of traditional publishing. We've already looked at the cons and pros of self-publishing in some previous videos, and today we are going into traditional publishing. Now, although I have not been traditionally published myself, I have done a lot of research into this topic, especially when I was figuring out which one I was going to choose, traditional versus self-publishing. And as you know from my last video, or as you may know from my last video, I've chosen self-publishing. But all the information that I've gathered so far and I'm going to give to you today has been through extensive research and through the experiences of others that I've read on. This is Leah Lindeman, author of the Canadian Reminiscence series. You can grab my books down below at the links I provided. I also have a newsletter that I put out monthly, so you can go ahead and sign up for that. And I'm just so glad you're here with me today. Now that self-publishing is a movement that has been growing and has more and more professional authors behind it with professional bodies of work as evidence, it's easier to see now the cons of traditional publishing. Let's take a look at some of those. So number one is it takes a lot of time to actually get your book into the market. And I did mention this in my last video, but I'm going to kind of stretch it out a little bit more in this one. First of all, if you wanted to get, let's say, into the big five, maybe even not the big five, but a big traditional publishing house company, you have to get an agent. Most of them won't even look at you if you don't have an agent. So you have this extra step that you need to take to even get to the big leagues. So let's talk about an agent. An agent is someone who's going to take a look at your work and is going to sell your work to the traditional publishing houses so you can even get into the house. Now, usually finding a literary agent takes a long time, and I know because I actually pursue that avenue before I decide to self-publish. And you can expect between 50 to 100 rejections before you even get a yes. You have to find the literary agent that's going to have your vision, that's going to see your vision for what your story, for what you want your story to be. And that takes time. It takes time to research your agents, figure out what kind of stories they're looking for, how to query them, and then actually sending out all the queries, but in a way that doesn't make it sound like you're mass emailing everybody and you're not putting any personal touch into your emails whatsoever. So that takes time. That can take anywhere between 6 months to a year. Depends on how often you do it, how quickly you get a yes. As I said, 50 to 100 rejections is very normal. Now, once you get the literary agent, now you're going to be looking to sell your work to traditional houses. And then again, is the same process of trying to find a traditional publishing house that is looking for your type of work, that is looking to buy at the time that you're selling, which doesn't always coincide in the timing that you want it to. So this again could take, let's say, another year. Then you have to, once you've sold the work, then your editor takes a look at it and then tells you what you need to fix. Then you actually need to go through all the edits. And it may not just be one round of edits. It may be 1, 2, or 3 rounds of edits, depending on how many people take a look at the manuscript, how many people are wanting to make changes, and so on and so forth. Once it's actually ready, then you still have to wait another amount of time for them to actually process it and put it into a book that is printed and then to get it on the shelf. So by the time you're done this whole process, it could take 2 to 3 years before it's actually sold, edited, processed, printed, and actually up on the shelves. So I would say this is a huge con for traditional publishing, especially when your work is ready to go and maybe you're not so good with patience, which is okay. But just saying, it takes a while. But if you are holding the pros in your mind as kind of a reward that once you get to the end, you are going to reap those rewards, that's great for you. And we'll talk about those in the next video. Number 2 is, and this is kind of the great antithesis from last week's video, which was one of the major pros I mentioned for self-publishing. With traditional publishing, you do not have the final say. You do not have all the creative control. You need to listen to those people who have been put on your team to get your book ready for the world to see. You have your editor, you have cover designers, and a whole host of other people who have their hands on it, who have something that they're going to say about it, that are going to help shape what it ultimately is going to be packaged as for when the reader actually gets to read it. And, well, for people who want a great say and how it's going to go, that could be a little dicey. And maybe you might strike it gold and you'll get an editor who you really jive with and who you can really work with. And maybe you'll get a traditional publisher that really appreciates your opinions and what you have to say. But ultimately, listen to this, guys. It's a business for them. It's not to make you happy specifically. I mean, obviously, they want their author to be somewhat happy, but those pros that I mentioned for next week can be a kind of good carrot on the stick. But just saying that it's a business, they need to sell books, and they know what sells. So obviously for editing, and this is kind of going to go into the pro for next week, it's a good thing that you have lots of people, you know, catching all your grammar mistakes. But they are going to have great say over how the story goes or what shouldn't or shouldn't be in there, and you have to acquiesce and you have to work with those people and what their thoughts are on your work. Same thing with the cover. You don't really get the final say in what the cover looks like because they know what sells covers. They know the color schemes that are going to grab people's attention. They know how the font is going to go and the spacing and all those technical aspects that maybe you want to have a hand in, but you can't because ultimately you're not part of the traditional publishing house and you may not know what sells. Number 3 are deadlines. And again, as you are working with editors, you are going to have to meet your deadlines. I mean, enough said. Do you work well with deadlines? With your lifestyle, are you able to manage deadlines? Will you make the deadlines a priority? That's just a good thing to keep in mind. Number 4, another great downside to traditional publishing is the low royalties. Your royalties only come in at 10 to 15%, which isn't much. Unless you are selling millions and millions of copies like J.K. Rowling or Suzanne Collins or Stephanie Meyers, you know, those gold hitters that millions of people are buying their books and movies are being made about their books and all this fanfare. Most probably isn't going to happen with your book, especially as a first-time author with a traditional publishing house. That might come to pass as perhaps you output more books and you grow your fan base and more people get to know you, but 10 to 15%, that's very measly. It's nothing. It's not even 40%, little less than 50%. So that's a huge downside to traditional publishing, and you have to be, I guess, okay that you're not getting that much out of a work that you've put your heart and soul into. So good thought to consider. Also, another downside to traditional publishing, this is number 5. Beware of the contract that you're signing and what rights you are signing away. You don't own all the rights to your book. You may have sold out your rights completely. You may have sold out certain rights, worldwide rights, movie rights. Let's say you have a deal with a traditional publishing house. They are putting out a paperback for you, an ebook, but they are not willing to put in the expense of, let's say, an audiobook. Well, then you'd have to kind of go through your contract and see, okay, is this something that I'm actually able to do? Do they own the rights to an audiobook? And if not, then that's great. Then you can do it yourself. But if they do, then your hands are tied and you can't take that initiative on yourself to actually put out another part of your work or another aspect of your work that's going to reach more people, more readers that can enjoy your work. So beware that you may be signing away rights that guarantee freedom for you to control more of the creative aspect of your work and how many people it can reach. So these are the major downfalls of traditional publishing. And yes, there are some pros. It's not all gloomy. We are going to be looking to the pros next week. But it's a good idea to know what you are signing away when you are traditionally published. What is, and we'll kind of get into this in the last video of the series, what can you compromise or give up when it comes to your creative soul? When it comes to the reach that you have in every aspect of your work. I hope that these thoughts have been enlightening and maybe perhaps helped you see, oh, that is not all roses when it comes to traditional publishing. And next week we're going to take a look at the pros. I hope you guys have a great week. Please like this video if this has been helpful, and you can ring the bell and subscribe down below. Take care. See you next time.